It's show and tell, and I have the amazing Sharon Dunn here, and we have something that we have to share with everybody, that we're going to see each other pretty soon at our sneak peek of Hopeville. Am I right?
You are right, and I'm looking forward to it. I love it.
It's going to be great. So I just got to tell everybody who's watching, so how we met was I was at the Reading League conference. I said Hopeville, Rusty Dyer, and then you said, wait a minute, yeah, I know those names. And you were on our monitor here all the time. You were one of our first evidence-based champions from California to help us out on our film. Am I right?
You are right. We met at the mixer for Syracuse for the Reading League conference in Syracuse, New York. And you were quite the talker. And when we got to talking about my school and that we can prevent reading failure, and I found out you're doing a documentary, and I'm like, oh, this is awesome, because we can prevent reading failure. And we did it at my school. And then you asked me all kinds of questions about my school and what we did. And then I said, I'm presenting, I think I was presenting the next day, and you came to the presentation. And then I also introduced you at that mixer to Dr. Roland Good, who was the co-creator of Acadian's assessment, because it was life-changing at my school. And he was in the presentation, and you filmed part of the presentation, and it just was, it was a serendipitous moment. I really loved it.
Well, I mean, I feel like James Bond when I meet Dr. Good. I mean, guys like me, I always meet Dr. Evil, Dr. Bad, but Dr. Good, man.
He is Dr. Good. He is good. He's done good. Oh my goodness. Without accurate assessment data, we don't know if we're on the right track. What he has created, it's truly life-changing for districts, for principals, for teachers, for students to know how close they are to becoming a proficient reader.
So when I met you, you were presenting. Who were you presenting with? You were presenting with your first grade teacher.
I was Diane Bryson, and also Dr. Stephanie Stoller, who was, when I met her, she was an assistant researcher for Acadians, Dr. Good's right-hand person, and she trained me in Acadians for my school district. And I would be able to call her and say, what does this mean? How do I interpret this data? She kind of was my go-to person during my journey. And now she's out on her own with the Reading Science Academy. And she's just like, oh, she helps hundreds and thousands of people to do what it takes to learn about the science of reading and assessment data and what we can do with MTSS. And she helped me with forming MTSS at my school. And then my first grade teacher was one of my first leads to jump on board and like, okay, here we go. Because honestly, at the school site, when I realized the aha moment, the seminal moment of that data, that Acadians data telling me, how can our kindergartners at a high poverty school, 88% poverty in Bakersfield, California, we had 70% Hispanic, 14% African American, about 28 to 30% EL. How can they start kindergarten about 36% proficiency in reading on course at the beginning of the year, but in the year at 28%? Go lower. And we had really good kindergarten teachers. They were wonderful.
Wait a minute. I gotta, how we got here. This is the craziest thing in the world, because I was just talking to Donna yesterday, and
yes.
And Stephanie Stoller is also going to be on our podcast. I mean, it's all of these. You are the guys. He might be Dr. Good, but you guys are the do-gooders. You're changing the world. You're revolutionaries. But I mean, you're hanging out with your first grade teacher. I mean, is she your first grade? Is she just in your team as a first grade teacher, or was she your actual first grade teacher? When you were in first grade, was she your teacher?
No, she was not. No, she was my
I was wondering how they did that.
Loudon Elementary. Yes.
You fooled me. Okay, now I know.
Yeah, she was my lead. And so it was such a treat to be able to speak to the audience in Syracuse, and we had a packed ballroom. I mean, it was a surreal experience to be with my mentor, Stephanie Stoller, and have one of my first grade, one of my teachers from my school present the transformation that happened at Loudon. And if we can prevent reading failure, so can everyone else.
Well, that's
And
the thing. You're known for turning a school around. I mean, you're kind of famous now, right? You are.
no,
Yes, you are. No,
no.
you are. You are. You say not, and I say, oh, then we, you are. So you turned a school around. So, and when we made the film Hopeville, we believed if one school can do it, two schools can do it. If two schools can do
Right.
it, four schools can do it. And that's what you're doing out there independently. You're also using the science of reading, because it
Well,
works. So tell us how did it happen? So
yeah.
so wait a minute, just
So,
tell us how it happened. You walked in there, and what's going on with your numbers before you turned it around? How do you turn a school around?
right. Okay. Good question. Because I didn't know, Harvey. That's what I'm saying. If I can do it, I did know enough about the 5 big ideas of reading that you've got to have the phonological awareness, phonics, and then you've got to have vocabulary and oral language, and then that oral reading fluency to result in comprehension. I knew enough about that. And then with Acadians being such an accurate assessment, I said, we are in trouble. This ship is really sinking fast. And I had to change. It's the tyranny of, these are kids' lives at stake. And the buck stopped with me. I was a principal. Fortunately, my district allowed me to kind of forge a path without them. And I was able to, as I said, bring on Acadians. I was able to bring in 95% group that helped me. That was, I met Dr. Susan Hall at a National Title I conference, and she's the co-creator of 95. But she was a national letters trainer. She was one of the small group with Dr. Louisa Moats. Talk about the science of reading. And it wasn't even a term when I was in the middle of this journey at Loudon Elementary. It wasn't even a term yet. It was like science-based research or something like that. And so I was lucky enough to meet Dr. Susan Hall, and she had created these materials and processes to really target that instruction based on the science of reading foundations, and that we had continuous professional development. And I didn't know everything. That's the thing about leadership. You grow into being a leader. As Jim Collins says in his book, Good to Great, you grow into that. I know that General MacArthur, he references this in some of his videos, that I'm going to mess this up because I've got to read it, that leadership is the art of getting people to do what must be done. And with reading and kids, we have to make sure they're proficient readers in all aspects, and writers. And the goal is like, we have to know what must be done and then make sure it's right, and then get people to want to do it. And then it's the art of growing into being that leader. So I didn't know everything. I learned in my journey. I grew as a leader. That continuous 3 times a year professional learning with Dr. Hall and her consultants with 95% group, it was transformational. And there were teachers that were upset. They didn't want to be in that journey. They wanted to close their door and honestly do whatever they wanted. And we weren't meeting the needs of our kids. But the data, that accurate data, showed, okay, well, when we change our instruction and we truly target the needs of our learners, the red kids get less red, the yellows go into green, the greens get blue. I mean, for general purposes, our kids were starting to move. And it didn't happen overnight. You have to stay the course as a leader. And there's pushback. It was the most difficult thing I've ever done in my entire life. It was tough because I was getting shots from CTA. Teachers were against me. And there were some that, many that left. And then I was able to hire from other districts and kind of build a coalition. But my leaders that stayed with me, like Diane Bryson, Morgan Patrick, Yolanda Horn, Lisa Gaines, Ian Elliott, Rebecca Lopez, they were my pillars of strength, and we moved the school forward together, and I learned along with them, shoulder to shoulder. And we grew in our knowledge. And it took about 4 years, maybe 5, to really turn that school around, when we have 28% at the end of the year in kindergarten not meeting proficiency in reading, to have, get this, sixth graders, 93% of our sixth graders could read accurately and fluently with connected text going into junior high in the middle of the year. That's what Acadian's data told us, that what we did, what the changes we made, what we implemented were spot on.
So this is the interesting thing. So now you're a professional who saw the problem, turned it around. When you and I are talking, I'm an old guy, and 4 years of 4 years. But 4 years when you're in fourth grade, or 4 years when you're in going into high school, those are huge. And then what happens afterwards is important. You actually have the name of our show is Show and Tell, and you have something to show us. You can.
I do.
Other people can replicate it now, can't they?
Oh, 100%. 93% of my sixth graders could read accurately and fluently, according to Acadian's data. And we're an 88% poverty school with a lot of barriers, a lot of things to overcome. That's what I'm saying. If we can do it, anyone can do it.
If we take a look at our prison populations, where we were just talking, and we look at those statistics, you're talking 75% of the population easily can't read. So you're changing lives. You as an educator, you go in and make a difference, and you can change lives. Okay. So I'm gonna sit back and drink some coffee, and you're gonna this is great. I appreciate you because this is Show and Tell, man.
Well, I might skip around.
Go ahead.
Or whatever. It really does, for leadership, for anybody in a principal position or district office or superintendent, it really does begin with the beliefs that the purpose of our school is to ensure that all students learn at high levels. And at first, when I would go to conferences and I'm thinking, yeah, but man, we're behind the eight ball. How does that happen? And we have to acknowledge that students learn at different rates and with they need different levels of support, and that we have to create a schedule. And this was huge, that guarantees that students will receive additional opportunities for learning in a systematic way, regardless of who their teacher might be. And I remember saying this to my staff early on in one of our first staff meetings. I have grandkids, and at the time it was 1 or 2 grandkids. Now I have 5, but I said, I need to be able to put any one of my grandchildren in any one of the classes and be guaranteed that they are going to have the same quality of instruction. And not all teachers want to hear that, but it's a fact. It's up to us. So to accomplish this, you have to build a systems. It's not just, okay, we've got the data, but you've got to have a systematic support. It's matching those students' needs to instruction through a collaborative problem-solving process. And this is where I learned a lot from Dr. Stephanie Stoller. But there have been many people along my journey. I love this quote from Larry Lazoe because it really, high expectations for success will be judged not only by our beliefs, what I just described, but by our behaviors and our response. And it's really about our response. How do we respond? How did I respond to only 28% of my kinders going into first grade to become a proficient reader, when I knew that 72% of those kinders were going to be first graders highly at risk? I had to respond. I had to do something different, and I had to base it in research. And with that accurate data, we were able to implement a collaborative problem-solving process, beginning with the universal screener, which was Acadian's. We were able to parse it down, like why are 72% of our first graders not meeting proficiency? Well, it was phonemic awareness and phonics. And then we were able to utilize a diagnostic screener. For us, we used 95% group diagnostic, and that was able to tell us, was it an R control vowel? Is it a vowel team? What is the issue? And we had the materials and processes to clean it up. And then we had to progress monitor along the way. Is our instruction working? Is it not? How do we adjust? Maybe the group size is too large. Maybe the teacher needs to be changed, or maybe we need better implementation of this process. We adjusted. It wasn't perfect. It was messy, but it was so
Wait a minute.
motivating.
This is a circle. This is a circle, and
Yeah.
it just keeps going around and around. So I know, I'm the dumb guy. I'm the filmmaker here. That if you're a potter and you're making the wheel, it's a circle and it's going around and around. So you don't just do this once. You're
No.
constantly checking this and your whole team understands it.
Yeah, every grade level. And it was student by student. I knew every student in my school where they were with what the data was telling us. And so as a result of that and driving that forward and year after year staying the course, here is our CASP data. Okay, and so in 2015, to read this chart, there are cohorts. And in 2015, the it's by grade level at the bottom. Sorry, it's, you know what, I just noticed the first set of bars is the third grade, and then it goes fourth grade, fifth grade, and ends in sixth grade. So the dark blue bar was the first year, 2015, when CASP happened in California. We were the lowest in our district. It was embarrassing. 24 schools, Loudon Elementary was the lowest, and I'm in an administrator's meeting, and I'm thinking, oh, and they're looking at me like, okay, well, you just started a walk to learn. You just started this, and look at where your school is. But I knew, just wait and see. I knew our data was moving, but it wasn't coming out at the end of the year CASP yet. We had to fix the reading problem. You fix the reading problem first, and your outcomes for your students are going to be exponentially higher when it comes to real world expectations at end of the year assessment like the CASP in California. So then that's 2015. So you move forward. Look at third grade, the first set of bars in 2019, 68% met proficiency when it was 23 at the beginning. This is staying the course. This is changing instruction. And you go all the way to sixth grade, where 58% in 2019 were meeting or exceeding standards for CASP. Overall, in those 4 or 5 short years, nearly 60% of our students, third through sixth grade, met proficiency. And let me tell you something, Harvey. What happened in March of 2020?
This little thing called a pandemic.
Yeah. And in March of 2020, so May of 2020, the school districts did not take the CASP assessment. And my teachers were highly upset because they knew, my sixth grade team knew, oh man, we're gonna meet 70% or more at the end of the year assessment this year. Because of that 93%, our data was telling us 93% of our sixth graders were reading accurately and fluently in January of 2020. And they were utterly disappointed that it wouldn't show in the CASP data that we needed another year growth. Of course, we want to hit 95%, but we were on the way. My point is, it's a journey. We were on our way of improving and changing the lives of students forever. Nothing or no one can take away reading proficiency from our students and our underserved students that have barriers to forge through in life. And reading helps open the doors and access opportunity for life, and it trickles out into our community, and it would change our community forever. And I'm so passionate about that. I just get excited when I am able to share our CASP data. So this is the actual data from Acadians. And
But Sharon, am I going to just, I'm going to play the devil's advocate. I'm board of education someplace, and or I'm school superintendent or principal. This just costs too much money, to do this.
right.
I mean, I understand you're a do-gooder and you want to teach kids how to read, but I mean, this is really hard. You had some teachers leave, as you said. Why? It just costs too much to be able to pull it off.
No, well, so you have to look at, well, let's line up the kids. Let's look at the photos of our kids in the underserved, impoverished schools that serve impoverished students. Is it too much money? Where do we draw the line? What's the purpose of schooling? If they can't read, if they can't access print and read proficiently, it's a disservice. Shame on us. It's malpractice. That's the number one job of our schools. Our parents entrust us with this. They believe that we're going to teach their kids how to read. And special ed placement is off the charts because, oh, well, they can't read. Let's put them in special ed. Special ed doesn't wave a magic wand. Kids learn to read in the same way. And it's up to us to have our core tier 1 instruction and our tier 2 instruction intervention meet the needs of our students, where we can get 93-95% of our kids reading accurately and fluently. It's our job. Yeah, it may be expensive, but you know what? Thank goodness with my school, and I had a large enough district, I was in charge of my Title I budget and my principal's budget. And I just went through that budget with a fine-tooth comb, and I set aside what wasn't working, what do we not need. But I knew we needed professional development. Professional learning is expensive. I put all my resources into that because we had to create leaders. We had to create teachers that knew how to teach reading because they didn't get it in their colleges or universities. And I had to create that on my campus to give them the knowledge and understanding that they needed. And I learned right along with them. And so that it's not you can't put a price tag on kids. That's our job. And so there's plenty of money, especially in California, to reallocate, to really streamline what's important and what's not. And let's get this fixed. And it's not to say math is not important. Of course it's important, but our math scores went up with our reading scores because they could access that math. It went hand in hand. And you know what else? When we created accurate readers, the behaviors went down. And it was such a pleasure to walk around campus because our kids, you could see it. They felt empowered and they were making achievements that they'd never made in their life before. And we had 10, 12 different school districts from up and down the state visit our school to see what we were doing. I would just talk about it in conferences I would go to. I wasn't a speaker then, but when I would attend conferences for learning, I would share, well, this is what our school's doing. And they would come and see in droves. They would come to Bakersfield, spend the night and go through our school, sometimes 2 and 3 times. It was truly profound.
Here, put yourself on big screen.
No
or you can talk to me about this, but
can...
I want to see you on big screen when you're talking about all this because you're passionate.
I hope so. But back to your point, we can't afford not to spend money on our kids in helping them learn how to read proficiently. I'm not talking about reading basic level, proficiently. Well, they'll be able to tackle an end of the year assessment and know what that's all about. And like at Loudon, our kids were excited for the CASP. They didn't dread it. They wanted that end of the year assessment because they want to do better than last year. They knew that they were in a better place and they wanted to see their end of the year scores. It was unbelievable. So at our school, another point, Hattie's research, unbelievable, his research, but this is a little synthesis of his research, collective teacher efficacy. It's a 1.57 effect size. That was Loudon Elementary. Each grade level planned together. They created that collective teacher efficacy because of the systems and procedures we put in place with that collaborative problem-solving cycle. They shared students. We had 2 walk to learns. We had a schedule with our paraprofessional aides, and we had small group instruction targeted. It was truly textbook. It was truly a textbook case of collaborative problem solving. Collective teacher efficacy. And then response to intervention. Well, now it's MTSS. When it comes to reading, it truly was response to intervention and instruction. We targeted the needs of our students, and that's a 1.29 effect size. And then direct instruction. And I can't say enough about letters training with Dr. Louisa Motes and Dr. Susan Hall. That was one of those initial national letters trainer, and she co-created and developed 95% group that was just profound in changing our students and the ability to read. And I didn't even know about the quote unquote science of reading at the time, but I knew research and I knew enough that this was the real deal and this would change our students' lives forever. I didn't have all the answers and I needed support. I needed to get with the right people and do the right thing. And we were able to accomplish like 3 of those big items that John Hattie points out that will change a school, and it did for us. That collective teacher efficacy, it's the staff's shared belief that through their collective action, they can positively influence student outcomes, including those who are disengaged and disadvantaged. And that's where we were, and we had to pull together, and we did. And that's where it was a privilege to present with Diane Bryson, my first grade teacher at Loudon Elementary, to have her speak of the profound changes. I'm just not making this up. I have a real person, a person who was with me along the way in that journey, and she could attest to the fact. So there's another thing I want to share with the Wallace Foundation. They talk about the principal and the effect that a principal has in the school system. And I found this out through this journey, is like the principal's the linchpin. It's wonderful if your district's on board with you, but if you're alone and you're on your own, and I was kind of pioneering this path, I was alone. And it's so true what the Wallace Foundation has said. An effective principal, the impact is stronger and broader than previously thought, making it difficult to envision a higher return on investment in K-12 education than the cultivation of a high quality school leadership, according to the research synthesis. So the reading gains from replacing a below average principal with an above average one would be larger than approximately 50% of the effects on reading achievement of various educational interventions in 747 studies. The principal really is the linchpin and leads the way in creating this change in reading outcomes. It's difficult to envision a higher investment or with a higher ceiling on its potential return than a successful effort to improve principal leadership. And that's where districts need to really take note. It's just finding the time. The principal is in charge. The principal has control of removing the barriers, of really providing that professional learning to learn alongside the teachers of what is the science of reading and how do we change things. The principal's in charge of that schedule. I had to rearrange recess, lunch, carve out blocks of time, and have our paraprofessionals. I only had 3 hours at the time of paraprofessionals, and have their breaks. And it was a masterpiece of a schedule. It was one of the most difficult things, is hammering out that schedule. But we were able to really target that instruction through a walk to learn schedule, and really targeting the instructional needs to the students, and have the specialists. We had music specialists and art, that was so important, but they had to work around that protected time. Our most important job is to fix that reading problem, and the principals have the ability to remove the barriers and protect the time it takes. And we have to stay the course. And it's like the flywheel effect in in Jim Collins' book, Good to Great. It's a heavy turn, that initial flywheel. It's removing those barriers, and sometimes you feel like you're alone, and getting that flywheel to start moving. But once it moves, it takes off. And the bottom line, you have to be willing to do whatever it takes. Like the Eisenhower quote, we have to do whatever it takes. Are you willing to do that? And that's what it comes down to. Districts have to really ask the question, are we willing to do whatever it takes to fix the reading problem? That's what every board member needs to ask themselves. So I've mentioned Dr. Stephanie Stoller, and she's an MTSS guru in the world of education, but she lets me use this slide. She kind of synthesizes what we need, our schools, our districts to make this change happen, to fix the reading problem, you have to learn about the science of reading. You have to collect the universal screening data as we did with Acadians, and progress monitor along the way. You have to implement that database collaborative problem solving wheel. You have to use that universal screening data to figure out if your tier 1, your core instruction, is right on point or not. And then what does tier 2 look like, and align that tier 2 and the diagnostic assessments to meet the needs. And we had to have boot camps after lunch. Sometimes we couldn't really meet the needs without having an extra scoop. And that's what you do. It's the art of leadership. You have to remove the barriers and do whatever it takes to get these kids to be proficient. That's why we had 93% of our 6th graders proficient in reading. So it really, we are interdependent, like you mentioned before, Harvey. It's learning alongside our teachers, equipping them with the right materials and processes and data to make the decisions in a collaborative problem-solving process, that collective teacher efficacy, principals leading the way, your district superintendent and admins being equipped with the knowledge to make these decisions for their district. What are the tenets of the science of reading? What does it mean? How are we going to allocate budgets to make this happen in all our schools? And then our Department of Ed and teacher prep, in California, it's lagging, but hopefully I'm thinking Governor Newsom actually his budget passed where he had money set aside for universal screening for dyslexia. I'm hoping, and there's a trailer bill written for that. And I'm hoping that California is on its way to have that legislature and governor input, and our Department of Ed will follow with making sure that we have science of reading and the tenets imposed for our teacher prep programs, steeped in evidence-based instruction that's in the foundational science of reading tenets. So
Sharon, what I love about this particular slide is, we've talked about it when, you've said before, and I've heard other leaders, administrators say, that's on me. Those numbers are on you. So you have to make a difference, because we know that this is a fixable situation through the science of literacy. We know that this is fixable, but your picture here tells you, if you're a teacher, get involved. If you're a principal, get involved. If you're a district superintendent or administrator, get involved. Even the parents can go talk to the legislators. The parents can go to these Board of Education meetings. Let your governor know it's important. I mean, this is all fixable, and anybody can do it. Am I close?
You're right. It's fixable. That's right. Even if your legislature isn't where it needs to be, even if your district admin isn't where it needs to be, the principal can make the difference in their own school. And if you feel like you're talking and relating to deaf ears, if no one's listening, you make the changes you can make. You stay the course, because kids' lives are at stake. You have to be relentless. It's those organic conversations. It's providing that teacher knowledge. Even if you don't know enough about the science of reading, it's okay. Make a plan, start being equipped, start bringing in professional learning on that topic, and make the changes you can make in your school, and look at that budget and reallocate your resources. You can make a difference. I'm hoping huge districts make this, change in California. We need to move the needle in reading. I mean, when we have over 66% of our kids not proficient in reading, it's criminal. It doesn't need to be.
Well, when we're talking about this, this is a national crisis, the literacy crisis. That's why there's 4 films about it right now. There's people,
right.
There's 3 million teachers out there. This is happening. California might have something different than South Dakota as a situation, or South Carolina. But we're all still the United States, and we all still know the science of reading still holds true, that you can almost get on the bus at any time and then correct it, because it's the numbers, it's the science that we're talking about. So you can correct it. So when you looked at, I don't know if you saw our advocacy toolkit.
I did.
It's based in every state. and we're going to, eventually, so we're doing a screening. You're going to be on the panel at the screening, and we do these podcasts just before we're going into these. So our film is 80 some odd minutes, but we're going to be talking for an hour. Eventually, there's going to be more people and more people. So eventually we'll have 100 hours of advocates and how to fight it, and from wherever you are. I mean, you are an administrator, a teacher who became a principal who changed the system. There's going to be parents that we're talking to. There's other educators we're talking to, and other advocates. So there's a lot of ways to get involved and change the system. Am I correct?
You are correct. And for example, with Loudon Elementary, we did it against all odds. We had a high poverty, impoverished situation, and there's a lot of history at the school site that created barriers. And I am fortunate to have a district that allowed me to lead that change and do whatever it takes to make those reading improvements.
But now you've changed it. Now you've changed it again. Now it has another history of being successful.
Oh, yes.
And so, I mean, so that's what I'm saying. I'm an optimist. I'm not. That's how crazy I am, that I believe we can actually change the world. That's why I talk to guys like you, because you're actually changing the world. You're changing somebody's life. We don't know when these kids graduate your school and they can read now, what would they have been? What are they going to be? And, things about reading, you get critical thought. You get the ability to be able to have empathy in other people's lives. You make informed decisions. I mean, you and your team drop the pebble in the pond, and we don't know where the ripples are going to end up.
Absolutely, that ripple effect is huge, and it's all about equipping kids to access opportunity, and they do that through proficiency in reading. Changes the world. It's going to change our community, but it's going to change our state. I mean, it ripples. Just think of the ripple effects across the nation if we were able to get and open the eyes and equip our administrators and our teachers to fix the reading problem. Imagine what could happen.
Okay, I love it. I'm going to imagine, and you're going to help me imagine, because you're a change agent. You're like kind of the fairy godmother, principal change agent. So you got that magic wand in your hand, Sharon. You got that magic wand. Now you don't have to imagine too much, but you and I and a couple of our friends are going to be doing a sneak peek of a film we worked on, where we followed the science of reading in the classroom for a year. We went and talked to experts all over the place. But then we have this advocacy toolkit that shows people, and we've had parents beginning to get back to us saying, this is great, this is helping us. We're in Georgia, and how can we get help here? Take a look at the site, and they're like, thank you. I said, keep us in the loop. They said, thank you. People are already beginning to help. So you got that magic wand. At our first sneak peek in California, who would you like in the audience? And who would be best served by sitting down in that theater, watching the film, and then getting involved in the Q&A with our panel discussion, which you're on the panel. You got that magic wand. Who is in the audience? Who would get the most out of it?
Our governor and Tony Thurmond, State Superintendent of Public Instruction, our legislators, other principals, the largest districts in California, to have them, some of their change agents, in the audience, or across in any screening you have, all of that, because we're interconnected. The Department of Ed, anybody in charge of teacher preparation, and how do we align it with the science of reading? And it's on that circle. We're all interdependent. That's who I'd want in the audience, because we can make this happen.
That's beautiful. From your lips to God's ears. Okay. So in closing and wrapping up, what haven't we talked about that the audience and I and everybody else who's watching this needs to know? What do you want us to know?
That it can be done. We can fix the reading problem. we have to start, make a plan. It's messy. You may feel like I'm not making any headway. You follow the data. The data always tells a story, but you have to have the right type of data. Accurate, evidence-aligned data that will show you if a child is becoming a proficient reader or not. Honestly, it's what I shared in the slides. It's kind of a recipe for success, and it's a very simplistic view. However, if you stick to those tenets that I shared, you will make a profound change in your school or district, and you will begin to improve reading outcomes. But you have to stay the course. Another shiny thing will come along, or this or that. Make a commitment. Stay the course. Stay with evidence-based instruction founded in the science of reading, and you cannot go wrong.
It's the data. It's in the numbers.
The data tells the story in every state, in every school district, in every school. The number one question to ask, are you willing to do whatever it takes?
And I know you're going to, it is hard. I heard what you said. It's hard. You made a master schedule on something that when it's said and done, we spent a year in a classroom, and we would see the reading specialists and the reading facilitators working with the teams. But the key word is the team. It's not like the teacher that goes in the room and closes the door. Well, this is what they taught me. I learned this back in school, or I learned this from such and such, and I'm doing okay. And they are doing okay, except they're getting a third of the kids are, and the data is those kids are going to learn anyhow.
Right. Exactly. That's probably one of the biggest obstacles with helping teachers understand we can do better, because teachers get attached to certain instructional strategies that they love, that have worked with maybe 35% of the kids. As you state, Harvey, we have about 35% of the kids across the nation that are going to learn no matter really what strategy you have. Reading comes pretty easy. But what do you do with the rest? What do you do with the 65% that need structured literacy, systematic, sequential, explicit instruction in reading? And that's where we have to dig down and go further and change our instruction to meet the needs of those students, every one of them. And so you have to know your school, your grade levels, and build that collective teacher efficacy around that data. How do we pull together as a first grade, kindergarten, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth? How do we pull together and calibrate our instruction where we're getting the most targeted instruction to meet the needs for our students?
Well, the path of no resistance.
We measure that by the data.
Well, the path, no, the data's there, but you have to do that. It's easier when you're just going to say, and again, and I don't want to, I'm not the guy who says teachers are this or teachers are that. Some teachers are this, some teachers are that. It's quite easy after you've been a teacher for a long time. There's just, what do you do with the other 30? Everybody outside of that 35%, you just label them. This kid's not going to learn. This kid doesn't try hard enough. This kid doesn't do it. As opposed to digging down deep into it, and it's easy for us to go down that path. It's hard for us to go down your path, to take this data, and you can say, when people say, I'll believe it when I see it. Well, they can see it when they see the data, can't they?
Yes. So that was one of the largest challenges when I was appointed principal at Loudoun, was there was a culture, and it's true in most, that's the culture I taught in when going up teaching kindergarten, third, fifth, sixth grades. You think, okay, well, they're absent a lot, or the parents don't care, or there's this or that, there's excuses. And I had to kind of flip it around and say, okay, true, but the parents send us their best. Those are their kids. Just like, imagine it's your child walking through the door and your child is struggling to read, or your grandchild. How are you going to meet their needs? And it's it's hard for a teacher to do it by themselves. That's where that collective teacher efficacy, you have to open up the school, you have to open up the grade level and all the paraprofessionals. It's a team. We have to strategically meet the needs, and we have to have that knowledge to know how to meet the needs. For us, it was direct instruction and using 95% group. I didn't have time. Our ship was sinking when I saw 72% of our kinders going into first grade at risk. I didn't have time. I had to figure it out fast. Like, this is bad. And so I had to figure out, I needed a scripted program that's evidence-based. And there's a lot out there. How do you know which is which? But that's where I'm so thankful for the people I knew in my life to go to the Acadians training and meet Dr. Roland Good and Dr. Ruth Kaminsky and ask the hard questions, and go in that ballroom with LA Unified or Compton or all of these school districts. What are you doing to change reading? You know, and kind of put the tools in my toolkit and figure out, okay, and know Dr. Stephanie Stoller, and she helped me with that MTSS systems. Okay, I got it, because we were kind of ad hoc. We had a tier 2 intervention, but it was all over the place. It wasn't systematic. And, you know, we were making some gains, but not enough.
But Sharon, you're an educated consumer. I mean, you know, nowadays, I mean, you bought a car before in your life. You bought a house. And you didn't just, maybe you just like, you know, you get off the bus and you say, that's the car I'm going to buy, or maybe you try it out, or maybe you ask your sister, your brother-in-law, or your mechanic, or your husband, or somebody else. How about this car? Maybe you read Popular Mechanics about the car. So what you're saying is there's homework involved. There's a lot of stuff saying that, like, if you read the newspapers and you see the stuff that's in the headlines about what's going on in literacy, we know that to make the right decision. And again, teachers say, "Oh, I've seen this program before. I've seen this program before." But that's the administrator's problem. The principal, the school superintendent, the board of education, they have to do the detective work. They have to kick the tires in that car. They have to take it for a test drive. They have to read consumers' reports on that on their purchase. But mostly, I think what you're saying is numbers. In this case, numbers aren't lying when we're looking at these kids. And
right.
we're seeing where these kids, can they read or can they not read? There's a test. And do you understand what this is? And if that's changing, and as you said, all of a sudden these kids start coming back to school more, they're happy more. I mean, it's hard for your parents to say, oh, my parents are going to get involved. My parents don't speak the language that we're speaking in here. My parents didn't do good in school. There's going to be, any number of reasons. So working together as a team, keep going.
Parents that would typically give you a teacher a harder time, or an administrator, because their child is falling behind in reading. They know something's wrong, but they don't know how to exactly say it, because they're trusting us to teach their kids how to read. And so we really have to take, I know everyone takes it to heart. I'm not saying the majority of teachers don't. It's just teachers are kind of alone, and if their administrator is not on board, the administrator holds the key to put the systems in place and to equip with the right assessment tools and curriculum and the learning opportunities, the professional learning. So when we I don't know where I was going with that, Harvey. I lost my train of thought, so please don't put that in there. But one thing I want to say is you mentioned a consumer report or something. I love, just as our experience in Syracuse, New York, the Reading League summit. It was profound. The Reading League, Dr. Maria Murray, creating that coalition, that league, to help administrators and teachers across the nation, across the world, really define what is the science of reading, what is it not, and their whole booklet. I have it right here. This is our resource for districts and principals to make the changes they need. It's a tool in their toolkit that is indispensable. And I love the fact that I was able to speak at that conference and share the story and then be involved in California. I'm happy to say we just became an official Reading League California chapter this last week. Our website will be up and running in another week. And we're hoping to help move the needle in California to get more kids proficient in reading and come alongside with our mission partners with Todd Collins, the trustee on the board in Palo Alto, and Kareem Weaver and Margaret Goldberg and Linda Diamond that helps us in California on the Reading League, and all of these people. They are so passionate about changing the outcomes and improving reading outcomes for our students. But the Reading League is really a guidebook, a guidance to what we can do to improve reading outcomes. It's our filter, because there's you Google things, it's like drinking out of the fire hose. You can get a webinar every 10 minutes if you want to on people claiming this or that in the science of reading, but how do you know it's the real deal? Well, that's where the Reading League, this is the tried and true. This is tried and true. This is what you should sift all your information through to help you know if you're on the right track or not.
The gold standard.
The gold standard. That's exactly it.
Well, we talked about this that the years ago there was there was a guy by the name of Orton, there was a guy by the name of Gillian, and they get together, and one does science and one does education, and then eventually what happens is they get this organization going, the Orton Society, which becomes the International Dyslexic Association, which works out for 20% of the population, maybe 20% of the population, but you can start using the science of reading teaches these kids how to read. So it begins to start picking up track. Now, when they became this International Dyslexic Association, there were still researchers and still practicing. They didn't get involved in legislation. That's where decoding dyslexia comes in. Now you get these parents that are getting involved, and they're going to the legislation, and they're going in rooms that they would take the researchers in with them. They'll take the educators in with them with the data. But so now you get this whole entire momentum of stuff, and then along comes the Reading League and the 95% group and everything, and Donna's group, which has the longest name in the world. The science of reading of everything I didn't learn in school. College. So they all begin to serve. One is serving the educators in one way, and then another one is as you said, a league where they're coming together. So all of this together, this is the drumbeat, and everybody comes and goes to these conferences, and there's this thing called the internet everybody uses now, and they go back and forth, and they find out, we have this problem here, we have this problem here, we have the same problem here, because years before decoding dyslexia, people, they made it like, hey, we're going to talk about, they did that to you in school, they're not letting you talk about this. Now everybody's talking about it. Now we realize we see the numbers, and we see where we are as a nation in our education, and here's the beautiful part. Everybody can get involved, and everybody can get involved wherever they are. That's why I love that circle thing that you had. They're all going to be able to get involved from where they are exactly today. Exactly right. Today. They just have to look and see where they're going to get on, and they can bring about change.
Absolutely.
Beautiful. 100%. Well, I love that we're here talking. I can't wait to see you in a couple of weeks in California, and we're gonna have a great panel discussion, and we're gonna have a lot of fun, and we're gonna do a lot of internet stuff, and thank you for being on our podcast.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. All right, we're gonna be talking soon, and anything else you want to put in right now before?
Thank you. It was so good to see you, and I just appreciate all the work you're doing. You're like a dog on a bone. You got it going. So it's great.
Well, I'm kind of like fleas on a dog too. So, all right. Well, I am so happy. I am honored to be seen by you, and I'm so happy we're talking. I'm so happy to be working with you, and I'm honored to know you and all the good work you're doing. And you and your educators, you're the you're the pebble in the pond, and the ripples that are out there, and nobody knows what kind of change it's going to be, but we can figure out by taking a look at the data what kind of response, what kind of a better world it's going to be.
Absolutely.